Some things shouldn't be held. Some people walk into a room and suddenly your peace disappears, not because they took anything, but because you were already holding too much: expectations, approval, outcomes. But what if the most powerful act isn't to grip tighter, but to let go? This is the path of detachment, not indifference, but disciplined clarity. This is not running away, it's walking toward your center. Welcome to unshakable calm, where the Stoic doesn't flinch, he recalibrates, where the goal is not to be liked, but to be untouchable. If you've ever felt hijacked by emotion, drained by chaos, or trapped by things beyond your grasp, this is your invitation. Today, we arm your mind with a different kind of weapon, one forged in silence, clarity, and control. Let's begin. Part 1, the invisible battle: why you're tired isn't what you think. What exhausts us most in life isn't hardship, it's resistance to reality. A Stoic doesn't simply endure life, he aligns with its rhythm. He recognizes that nature's unfolding is not his to dominate, but to harmonize with. In our modern world, this battle takes a subtler form, not against nature, but against our expectations. We are haunted by an illusion. The illusion of control. We chase perfect outcomes, idolize productivity, plan obsessively, yet feel hollow, disoriented, burnt out, not because life is hard, but because we drag what is dead. Grudges, fantasies, unkept promises, imagined futures, we refuse to let go, and that clinging turns the mind into a battlefield. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. He didn't write that as theory. He wrote it during war, amid betrayal and sickness. And yet he stood unshaken, not because he controlled the world, but because he controlled how he met it. We suffer most not when we lose, but when we resist losing. We're not weary from life, we're weary from fighting life. Practice prompt today. List 3 frustrations, then mark which are within your control. Release the others with ritual. Tear the list, burn it, say aloud, I hold nothing, nothing holds me. What's one thing you've been holding on to that isn't serving you? Comment below and name it. Owning it is the first step to letting go. Part 2, Steve Jobs and the art of cutting clean: strategic detachment. Detachment in Stoicism is not emotional coldness, it is clarity sharpened by discipline. The Stoic detaches not from care, but from distortion. From the biases created by craving, by fear, by nostalgia. To understand this in action, we turn to Steve Jobs. Though not a Stoic by name, his decision-making embodied many of its principles. Jobs wasn't afraid to say no to good ideas, to former friends, even to legacy projects. He removed anything that clouded vision, even if it once held deep emotional weight. In 1997, when Jobs returned to Apple, he faced a company bloated with dozens of overlapping products. Instead of preserving all that had history, he famously drew a grid on a whiteboard, 4 quadrants, 4 core product categories. Everything else cut, eliminated, not because they were failures, but because they diluted focus. This is what Seneca meant when he said, "He who is brave is free." Bravery in this context is the strength to detach from what no longer serves your essential path, even if it once defined you. Jobs' clarity helped Apple regain not just financial standing, but artistic direction. He wasn't emotionally detached in the cold sense, he was focused, exacting, strategic. He believed deeply in simplicity. The Stoic echoes this. Simplicity is strength. Ask yourself, what mental clutter are you preserving? What outdated versions of yourself are you still loyal to? The Stoic does not grieve over what must be let go. He asks only, does this align with my logos, my inner nature, my higher aim? Part 3, the great lie: why control is a trap. Modernity feeds us a delusion that with enough willpower, hustle, or manifestation, we can shape the world. But the Stoics saw clearly, 2,000 years before productivity gurus tried to sell you the illusion that nature is indifferent. It does not bend to will or intention. It unfolds as it will. Control is fleeting. What is yours today can vanish tomorrow. Relationships, wealth, reputation, even health. The more tightly we grip these things, the more fragile we become. Why? Because to cling to control is to base your peace on something fundamentally unstable. Epictetus put it plainly, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. This is not apathy, it is mastery. It is the refusal to let your emotional life be hijacked by external turbulence. Consider the modern professional whose identity is wrapped in status or achievement. One corporate restructure and their sense of self collapses. Why? Because they mistook possession for permanence. They confused influence with ownership. The Stoic trains not to prevent loss, but to remain upright through it. When you lose what was never truly yours, what is revealed is not failure, but dependency. A false identity tethered to something you never commanded. This is the core of what we must reframe. Failure is not always loss. Sometimes it is exposure. It exposes what we trusted too much. It reveals what we feared to release. To walk the Stoic path is not to control everything, but to control what matters, our response, our judgment, our effort, nothing more. Practice prompt for you: create 2 lists, one of your actions and one of your expectations. Hold the first, burn the second. Peace begins where expectation ends. Part 4, the discipline of the pause, reaction as weakness. In a reactive world, stillness is a rare and radical strength. We're conditioned to respond instantly, to defend, explain, retaliate, but the Stoic knows. The more you react, the more you reveal. Emotionally reactive people are easy to predict and easy to manipulate. Seneca warned, a man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. The hasty response isn't a shield, it's self-betrayal. When you lash out, argue, or defend compulsively, you surrender the very control you seek to protect. A disciplined mind doesn't suppress emotion, it governs it. The pause between stimulus and response is not empty space, it's a command center. In that moment, the Stoic chooses not to be ruled by ego, but guided by principle. Even Roman generals didn't rush into battle, they observed. They waited, then they acted decisively. Why then do we rush into arguments we haven't even thought through? Silence confuses aggressors. When you don't flinch, they lose control of the script. That unreadability becomes your advantage. Reaction is weakness, but the pause, that's strategy. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are pained by anything external, it is not the thing itself that disturbs you, but your judgment of it, and you have the power to revoke that judgment. The Stoic doesn't deny pain, he filters it. He waits, then chooses a response that protects his inner fortress. Think of someone who recently pushed your buttons. What would have happened if, instead of replying, you simply paused, breathed, observed? Practice prompt when provoked, count to 90, inhale deeply. Say to yourself, I am not here to perform, then act or don't. Let the pause become your counterattack. Part 5, emotional minimalism, the discipline of feeling lightly. To feel deeply is human, but to carry every feeling, every insult, every fear, every imagined slight is to exhaust the soul. The Stoic understands this. He does not aim to erase emotion, but to refine it, like a sculptor chiseling away excess stone to reveal form. Seneca wrote, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. This insight is startlingly modern. Most of our emotional weight does not come from real events, but from the stories we wrap around them. We don't just experience pain, we retell it, rehearse it, project it into the future. That's why the Stoic practices emotional minimalism. Like a disciplined traveler, he asks at every turn, do I need to carry this? Anger, offense, worry, envy, each comes at a cost. Each siphons energy that could have been used for focus, for action, for joy. This is not emotional coldness, it's emotional curation. Imagine your energy as a limited budget. Would you spend it on imagined criticisms? On grudges that serve no purpose, on rehashing what cannot be changed, the Stoic lets the wind pass. He doesn't chase echoes. When insulted, he pauses. When misjudged, he remains steady. Why? Because he knows that his peace is too valuable to spend on things beneath his control. Think of Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome. He was constantly betrayed, slandered, opposed, but in his journal he rarely vented. Instead, he examined. He filtered his emotions like a master alchemist, accepting the reality of pain but refusing to be ruled by it. In our own lives, we often mistake rumination for reflection, but the Stoic distinguishes. He chooses to feel only what sharpens him, not what weakens or entangles. Practice prompt. Tonight, before you sleep, reflect on your day. Journal each emotional spike, good or bad, then ask, was this feeling necessary? Was it useful? Or was it imagination rehearsing a fear? If it served no higher purpose, release it. Lighten your emotional backpack. Walk into tomorrow freer. Part 6. Dominance through absence, the hidden power of withdrawing. Sometimes the most commanding presence is no presence at all. Withdrawal in the Stoic mind is not escape, it is repositioning. It is the intentional pulling back of one's energy to recenter, recalibrate, and return sharper. In a world addicted to constant noise and instant response, stepping away becomes a radical act of power. Leonardo da Vinci, genius, polymath, Renaissance architect, was infamous for vanishing mid-project. Patrons complained of delays, but da Vinci was not lazy. He was gestating. Absence for him was incubation. He once said, men of lofty genius sometimes accomplish the most when they work the least, for their minds are occupied with their ideas and the perfection of their conceptions. His disappearances were strategic. And when he re-emerged, he didn't return with excuses. He returned with breakthroughs. The Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, the Vitruvian Man, none of these came from burnout or overexposure. They emerged from deep solitude. The Stoics practiced a similar philosophy. Seneca urged, withdraw into yourself, especially when forced to be among people. This isn't antisocial behavior, it's psychological defense. Not all absence is absence. Sometimes it is presence, just redirected inward. Why does this matter? Because in a reactive culture, constant availability becomes vulnerability. The more accessible you are, the more others can shape your state. When you're always reachable, you're always interruptible. And when you're always explaining, you're slowly eroding your power. The Stoic doesn't disappear to punish, he disappears to protect. He knows that by stepping away strategically, not spitefully, he creates mystery, space, and leverage. He becomes unreadable, unchained, and unbothered. In that space, others are forced to sit with their own behavior. This is how absence becomes dominance, not by withdrawing in weakness, but by choosing solitude as sharpening. You step back not to vanish, but to re-enter with clarity, purpose, and control. Practice prompt. Choose one channel of noise, texting, social media, meetings, and go silent for 24 hours. No announcements, no explanations, just disappear. Then observe what anxiety surfaces, what clarity returns. What power quietly reawakens. Part 7. The Unreadable Mind, Mental Sovereignty in the Age of Exposure. In a culture where oversharing is mistaken for authenticity, the unreadable mind becomes a fortress. We live in an age of performative vulnerability, where thoughts are tweeted before they're processed, emotions are live-streamed in real time, and privacy is often surrendered for the illusion of connection. But the Stoic, he withholds. Not out of fear, but out of sovereignty. Warren Buffett is known not just for his wealth, but for his silence. He rarely reveals his strategy in real time. His restraint creates a fog of uncertainty. Competitors can't outmaneuver him because they can't predict him. His quiet presence speaks louder than 100 declarations. In this, he echoes a deep Stoic principle. Conceal your mind not because you have something to hide, but because it's yours. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop narrating your virtues, live them. To be unreadable is to reclaim the sacred space between your thoughts and the world's gaze. The Stoic sees the mind as a citadel, not a stage. He doesn't narrate his internal process, he refines it. He doesn't seek validation, he seeks alignment. There is power in opacity. The less others know of your intentions, the less they can manipulate them. The fewer emotional signals you emit, the harder you are to destabilize. In this way, silence becomes not only protection, but a psychological tactic. The unreadable mind is not robotic, it is selective. It chooses when to reveal and when to restrain. It is driven by mission, not impulse. And because it leaks no unnecessary emotion, it retains full command of attention, energy, and direction. Consider this, the most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest. It's the one no one can quite read. Calm, observant, still. That stillness disturbs people because it resists labeling, and what cannot be labeled cannot be controlled. Practice prompt, speak 50% less today. When tempted to explain yourself, don't. Let silence speak. Let restraint challenge, let others wonder. Track how many questions are asked of you and how few require answering. Part 8, the untouchable state, becoming the storm. There exists a higher plane of being the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but invincibility, a state where emotion is not absent, but mastered. Where chaos is no longer an intruder, but background noise. This is not something granted. It is earned through solitude, through confrontation, through the discipline of choosing what deserves your inner space. Viktor Frankl, a man imprisoned in Auschwitz, understood this better than most. He lost everything, family, freedom, even food. But one thing remained, the power to choose his response. He wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." Frankl embodied apatheia. Not cold detachment, but resolute inner freedom. The world could beat his body, but never his will. This untouchable state is not emotional numbness, it's emotional sovereignty. The Stoic does not fear pain. He simply refuses to be ruled by it. He does not flee criticism, he transcends it. He doesn't beg for peace, he becomes it. Marcus Aurelius, besieged by political chaos, personal loss, and physical illness, still found the calm to write. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. This state is not passive, it's active resistance to internal collapse. When the world howls, the untouchable man does not flinch. He breathes, he adjusts his perimeter. He moves only when necessary and with precision. You do not reach this place by waiting. You sculpt it decision by decision, silence by silence, refusal by refusal. The less you explain, the stronger your posture. The less you seek validation, the more you command presence. Practice prompt. For 1 week, explain yourself only when clarity is essential. Let your silence carry weight. Let your stillness be your resistance. Walk as though your peace is not up for debate, because it is. Comment, "My peace is not a negotiation." And if it ever was, this is where it ends. Part 9, freedom through negative visualization, Premeditatio Malorum. There is a paradox in Stoicism that surprises the modern mind. To find peace, imagine everything going wrong. The practice is called Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius all employed it as a way to steal the mind. By vividly contemplating loss, rejection, failure, even death, the Stoic trains himself not to fear, but to prepare. This isn't pessimism, it's precision, it's strategic anticipation. When you imagine hardship in advance, you strip it of surprise, you disarm it. Seneca once wrote, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." By rehearsing adversity mentally, the Stoic gains clarity. He distinguishes what is within his control from what is not. In doing so, he builds psychological immunity, not by avoiding pain, but by inoculating against it. Modern thinkers have adapted this ancient tool. Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, developed a version he calls fear setting. It is rooted in Stoic philosophy. In his TED Talk, he describes how, at a low point in his life, he began journaling worst-case scenarios, detailing the absolute worst that could happen if he made a risky move. Then he'd ask, if this happened, what could I do to repair it? What's the cost of inaction? He discovered what Seneca knew: we suffer more from imagination than reality. Most fears dissolve under inspection. Marcus Aurelius did this often as Emperor of Rome. He envisioned his own death, the death of his children, betrayal by friends, the fall of the empire, but he didn't spiral into despair. Instead, he found strength in confronting these possibilities directly. His resolve became immune to external chaos. This mental rehearsal has a second function. It cultivates gratitude. When you meditate on losing something, your job, your health, your loved ones, you stop taking them for granted. Even mundane moments become sacred. The morning sun, a warm meal, a quiet room. As the Stoics would say, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think. The point is not to live in fear, but in perspective. Most people are caught in a trance of entitlement. They believe life owes them comfort, but the Stoic sees through that illusion. He walks into each day ready to lose, not because he wants to suffer, but because he refuses to be ruled by fear. Practice prompt. Tonight, sit quietly for 10 minutes. Choose one aspect of your life, your career, your health, a loved one. Ask yourself, what if it vanished tomorrow? How would I cope? What would I do? Write it out. Then close with this reminder. This is not mine, it is only on loan. I will not cling, I will appreciate. And ask yourself, what would I treasure more if I truly accepted it could be gone tomorrow? Leave your answer in the comments, it may help someone else see more clearly. Part 10, The Philosophy of Enough, How Reducing Desire Builds Invincibility. In a culture obsessed with more success, more fame, more followers, the Stoic practices the most radical act of rebellion. He declares this is enough. This is not minimalism as an aesthetic. It is minimalism as spiritual fortification, a deliberate reduction of desire to increase strength. Epictetus taught that poverty is not the absence of wealth, but the endless craving for more. He said wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This mindset creates invincibility. Why? Because the man who wants nothing cannot be threatened. You cannot bribe him. You cannot tempt him. You cannot shame him for lacking what he never desired. One of the clearest examples is Diogenes of Sinope, a philosopher who lived in a barrel, owned nothing, and begged for food. When Alexander the Great visited him and asked, "Is there anything I can do for you?" Diogenes replied, "Yes, step aside. You're blocking my sunlight." That moment defined Stoic power. The refusal to be impressed by status, the sovereignty of a mind unchained by desire. In modern times, entrepreneur and investor Naval Ravikant echoes this same idea. He once said, "A calm mind, a fit body, and a house full of love." These things can't be bought, you have to earn them. He urges people to build wealth not to chase status, but to buy back their time to pursue inner peace. But this freedom requires discipline. Most people are not free. They are enslaved by appetites they never questioned. They run on scripts written by advertisers and social pressures. They equate success with visibility, happiness with consumption, and in doing so, they drift from themselves. The Stoic asks, what is truly necessary? What can I live joyfully without? And once he answers, he begins to prune, not from resentment, but from recognition, from wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor, wrote of finding satisfaction in the most basic routines. Rising early, doing his duty, speaking little, thinking clearly. He could have drowned in luxury, but he preferred clarity over comfort. Practice prompt today. Identify one desire that has been quietly enslaving you, a craving for recognition, status, possessions. Then perform a symbolic fast. Avoid it for 48 hours. Observe your reactions. Are you agitated, anxious? Then write, I do not need this. I only believed I did. Part 11, Inner Citadel, Building Mental Fortresses Against External Storms. The Stoics spoke often of the inner citadel, a mental fortress built not of stone, but of judgment, virtue, and self-command. In a world filled with noise, betrayal, and uncertainty, the Stoic does not seek to escape the world. He seeks to fortify within. Marcus Aurelius coined the phrase in Meditations. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. This retreat is not withdrawal, it is recalibration. When insulted, the Stoic doesn't lash out, he returns inward. When plans fall apart, he doesn't collapse, he returns inward. Like a fortress standing through siege, he remains. But this citadel is not built overnight, it's constructed brick by brick through daily choices. Discipline in thought, mastery in reaction, and relentless alignment with logos, the universal reason. One modern embodiment of this is Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl. In Man's Search for Meaning, he described how, even in the horror of concentration camps, those who survived spiritually were those who still believed they had the power to choose their attitude. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Frankl's inner citadel remained unbroken, not because he denied suffering, but because he refused to give it sovereignty over his spirit. In contrast, most people today outsource their stability. Their peace is leased to validation, routine, comfort. Remove anyone and the structure collapses. The Stoic reverses that. He builds from the inside out. He trains himself to remain whole even when the outer world fractures. This mental sovereignty is why the Stoic can remain calm in political chaos, personal loss, or betrayal. He's not in denial, he's in command. He doesn't rely on the world to be quiet, he has quieted himself. Practice prompt tonight. Write a list of external events that recently disturbed your peace. Then ask, was my disturbance caused by the event or my interpretation? What would Marcus, Epictetus, or Frankl have done? Then write this sentence, my inner citadel is mine alone. Nothing enters unless I permit it. Post your favorite insight in the comments. Let's fortify each other. Part 12, Amor Fati, the fierce love of fate. Perhaps no Stoic idea is more misunderstood and more liberating than Amor Fati. Love of fate, not acceptance, not tolerance, but love. To welcome every twist of life, even the painful ones, as necessary as yours, as part of a deeper harmony you may not yet understand. Nietzsche adopted this ancient Stoic belief and breathed new life into it. He wrote, I want to learn more and more to see as beautiful what is necessary in things, then I shall be one of those who make things beautiful. Amor Fati, let that be my love henceforth. This is not blind optimism. It is warrior realism. To meet misfortune not with resentment, but with reverence. Marcus Aurelius, after losing multiple children and enduring war and plague, still wrote, whatever happens to you has been waiting to happen since the beginning of time. He didn't merely accept tragedy, he embraced its place in the grand design. This is Amor Fati, the refusal to resist life's script, not passively, but as an active collaboration. Consider Thomas Edison, whose factory burned down in 1914. Watching flames consume his life's work, he turned to his son and said, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." Later, he said, "I'm not discouraged, it's a good thing. I've just cleared out a lot of rubbish." That is Amor Fati. Edison didn't deny pain, he transmuted it. He turned catastrophe into clarity. Why does this matter? Because resistance is the root of most suffering. People don't just suffer, they fight the fact that they are suffering. They argue with reality. The Stoic does not. He may grieve, he may ache, but he does not curse the storm. He uses it to row harder, to become stronger, to burn cleaner. Practice prompt. Choose one difficult event in your life, past or present. Write it down. Then list 3 ways it shaped you. What strengths were born from it? What insights did it deliver? Then close with this line: I do not endure fate, I become one with it. Leave a comment: I choose Amor, Fati. Let the world know you've stopped resisting and started rising. Part 13, Contempt for Fame, Choosing Integrity over Applause. Don't live your life as if someone else is writing the script for your life. Unshakable calm. In a world addicted to applause, the Stoic walks away. He doesn't just ignore popularity, he distrusts it. He knows that the moment you hunger for approval from strangers, from peers, from crowds, your freedom begins to rot and your soul starts to bend. Marcus Aurelius warned us, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. This is more than ancient wisdom. It's a survival principle in the modern age. When you measure yourself by the metrics of others, likes, followers, praise, recognition, you trade sovereignty for slavery. Your values bend to applause. Your truth dilutes into branding. You stop being and start performing. That's not Stoicism, that's theater. Seneca said, "What you think of yourself is much more important than what others think of you." And Epictetus took it further. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's where Stoicism slices deepest. It asks, can you endure being misunderstood if it means remaining true? Most can't. They soften their words, polish their edges, and chase a shadow called reputation. The Stoic doesn't. He knows that applause is fleeting and often given for the wrong things. Crowds cheered Nero. Socrates was executed. Jesus was crucified. Galileo was condemned. Lincoln was hated in his lifetime. MLK was shot. Fame is not proof of virtue. Often it's a distraction from it. Modern example, take Keanu Reeves. At the height of his fame, he stepped back. He donated most of his Matrix earnings. He took the subway. He avoided celebrity worship. Why? Because he knew peace doesn't come from adoration, it comes from integrity. He didn't sell himself, he stayed himself. Or look at Jodie Foster, who famously refused to play the fame game, choosing roles and public silence over magazine covers and cheap stardom. Her private excellence speaks louder than most people's press tour. The Stoic respects that. He doesn't crave visibility, he craves congruence, the alignment of values and action, even if no one sees it. This doesn't mean hating success, it means being unmoved by it, not rejecting praise but not needing it. The ultimate Stoic victory is to remain uncorrupted by admiration, to do great things quietly for their own sake. Because what use is applause if you've lost your voice in chasing it? Practice prompt. Today, reflect on this. When you post, speak, or act, is it for truth or for claps? If the world disapproved of your best decision, would you still make it? Then write this somewhere private. I would rather be honest and invisible than admired and hollow. Let that be your mirror. Let that be your test. Let that be your calm. Part 14, The Philosopher in the Arena, Stoicism lived, not quoted. Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. This is the Stoic's final move, not retreat, but entrance. Not into a library, but into the world, not to preach, but to live. The Stoic isn't a statue in a robe, quoting dead men. He is the one in the arena, bruised, defiant, fully awake. He does not need to talk about virtue because his choices scream it. This final phase is where all the theory meets friction, where ideas become muscle memory. Because what good is inner peace if it collapses at the first insult? What good is memento mori if you waste your days scrolling? What good is Amor, Fati if you rage when life does not obey? The Stoic doesn't need the world to change, he changes how he meets it. He doesn't debate justice, he shows up when it's hard. He doesn't post about resilience, he works in silence. He doesn't chase legacy, he earns it by showing up every day quietly unshaken. Historical model. Marcus Aurelius. Yes, he wrote Meditations, but don't forget what surrounded those words: plague, invasion, betrayal, his own son becoming a tyrant. And yet he showed up every day. He didn't quit to become a monk. He ruled Rome, he fought wars, buried children, forgave enemies while writing thoughts in the margins of battle tents. Marcus didn't escape the arena, he governed it. Modern model, Admiral James Stockdale. U.S. Navy officer shot down during the Vietnam War, imprisoned for 7 years, beaten, starved, tortured. But he endured. Why? Because of Stoicism, because he had read Epictetus before the crash. He didn't just survive, he protected other prisoners, resisted his captors, and returned with dignity. He later said, "I never lost faith in the end of the story." That's what Stoicism gives you, not ease, not comfort, but unshakable faith in your principles, no matter the outcome. So now you've studied detachment, you've practiced the pause, you've walked through silence, loss, and stillness. You've questioned fame, faced mortality, and redefined freedom. But here you decide, will you remain a student of Stoicism or become its representative? This is where the scroll closes and the practice begins. This is where the philosopher steps into the arena. He doesn't wear the mask of calm, he is calm. He doesn't fear pain, he carries it with grace. He doesn't control the world, he controls himself. That is the final Stoic posture, standing still while the world shakes. Practice prompt. For 1 week, track your choices like a Roman ledger. Every evening ask, did I act with wisdom? Did I react with ego or virtue? Was I ruled or did I rule myself? End each night with a sentence from Epictetus. How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? Then answer, not in words, but in deeds. Build the fortress within. You've traversed the Stoic citadel, detachment, silence, presence, sovereignty. But theory without practice is luxury. So act, choose your weapon, pick your practice. Sharpen one virtue daily. Then subscribe to Unshakable Calm. This is your training ground, your armory, your echo chamber of reason. Turn on notifications. Revisit each principle. Share this video with someone who is drowning in noise. Let them see how calm isn't absence, it's supremacy. Remember, mastery is not found in noise, it's discovered in silence. Power isn't always declared, it is revealed in restraint. From this day forward, carry this truth. You don't just want peace, you become it. Which part of today's journey spoke loudest to you? Leave your favorite insight in the comments. Let's sharpen each other. Let them wonder why nothing breaks you. This is Unshakable Calm.